The Galactic Council crossed the line and humanity finally snapped part. The chamber hung in silence, cold and vast, orbiting just above Proxima Centauri b. Stars glittered beyond the transparent dome, indifferent to the tension thickening inside. Ambassador Daniel Carter stood alone on the human side of the room, his boots clicking softly against the polished obsidian floor. He wore a simple gray suit, no medals, no insignia, just a man representing a planet that had spent decades trying to prove it belonged among the stars. Across from him, seated on a crescent of floating thrones, were the 7 members of the Galactic Council. Their forms varied wildly, tall, slender beings with skin like polished jade, hulking reptilian figures with eyes that glowed faintly amber, and others whose shapes seemed to shift slightly, as if reality itself bent around them. At the center sat Speaker Vexillar, a being of smooth, silver scales and voice like grinding stone. "You have been summoned," Vexillar began without greeting, "because your species continues to test the patience of this council." Daniel kept his hands at his sides, his expression calm. Inside, his heart hammered. He had expected this meeting to be tense, but not like this. Not with the air so heavy it felt like breathing underwater. For over 40 standard cycles, Vexillar continued, humanity has been granted provisional membership in the galactic community. You were given access to trade routes, shared knowledge, and protection under the Concord Accords. In return, you agreed to abide by council oversight. Daniel nodded slowly. "We have honored every agreement, have you?" The word dripped with disbelief. "Your expansion into the Kuiper Belt has accelerated without approval. Your deep space defense grid, Project Aegis, operates outside council jurisdiction, and your population continues to spread beyond Sol, seeding colonies on worlds not yet surveyed for ecological compatibility. These are defensive measures," Daniel said carefully. "We've faced threats before. Rogue factions, pirate clans, even failed AI uprisings. We're not building weapons to attack. We're protecting our people." Vexillar's eyes narrowed. "Protection is a luxury for stable civilizations. Yours is still volatile, emotional, unpredictable. The Council has observed your history. Wars over land, over belief, over nothing at all. You nearly destroyed your own world twice before reaching the stars." Daniel didn't flinch. "And we learned. We rebuilt. We reached out. We didn't come here to conquer. We came to join." A low hum passed through the chamber as the other council members exchanged silent signals through pulses of light or subsonic vibrations. Then Vexillar leaned forward, his voice dropping to something almost like a whisper but no less sharp. "The council has reached a decision." Daniel braced himself. "You will dismantle Project Aegis within 30 solar cycles. You will withdraw all personnel from the outer Sol system, Jupiter's moons, Saturn's rings, the Kuiper Belt stations. Control of those regions will be transferred to Council peacekeeping forces. Furthermore, all human vessels must submit to biometric tracking and route approval before leaving Earth's orbit." Silence. Daniel stared. "You're asking us to disarm, to give up our own backyard." "We are ensuring galactic stability," Vexillar corrected. "Your refusal will be interpreted as an act of defiance, and defiance will not be tolerated." The words landed like stones in still water. Daniel knew what this meant. It wasn't just about defense grids or mining rights. It was about dignity, about whether humanity would be treated as a partner or a pet. He bowed slightly, not out of submission, but out of protocol. "I will deliver your message to Earth." He turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing in the empty corridor. Behind him, the council resumed their silent deliberations, already moving on to the next item on their agenda. They didn't see the fire in his eyes. They didn't know that on Earth, millions were watching the live feed in homes, schools, factories, and military bunkers. They didn't realize that the quiet, hopeful species they dismissed as emotional was about to show them what human emotion truly looked like when pushed too far. Back on Earth, President Lisa Monroe stood in the Situation Room beneath the White House, arms crossed, jaw tight. Around her, advisors murmured in low, urgent tones. General Owen Hayes paced near the holographic star map, his uniform crisp, his face grim. Dr. Nora Bell, the lead astrophysicist who had helped design Project Aegis, sat with her hands folded, eyes fixed on the screen replaying Vexillar's decree. "They can't be serious," Hayes muttered. "Dismantle Aegis? That grid protects us from cosmic radiation, asteroid strikes, and yes, hostile forces. Without it, we're naked. They're serious, Lisa said quietly. They've been waiting for an excuse. We've grown too fast, too loud. They see us as a threat now, not a student. Nora spoke without looking up. Jake Miller is on Phobos Station right now. He's calibrating the long-range sensors. If they shut us down, he'll be stranded. No resupply. No evacuation protocol. Lisa closed her eyes for a moment. Jake was 26. Brilliant. Had turned down offers from 3 off-world universities to stay and help build humanity's early warning system. What do we tell the people? Asked Communications Director Eli Park, hovering near the door. Lisa opened her eyes. The truth. All of it. Within the hour, the broadcast went live. Every screen on Earth, public plazas, home devices, even wristbands, showed Daniel Carter's return, then the Council's ultimatum. No spin, no sugarcoating, just the cold, hard demand, obey or be treated as an enemy. At first there was silence. Then came the protests. Not angry riots, not yet, but gatherings. People stood in city centers and farm fields on lunar bases, holding candles or tools or children's hands. They didn't chant slogans. They just stood. Together. In a small apartment in Chicago, a retired schoolteacher named Martha Green watched the broadcast with her grandson. They think we'll just roll over, she said, her voice soft but firm. But we've been through worse, and we're still here. On Mars Colony Theta, engineer Ryan Cole shut down his workstation and walked outside in his pressure suit. He looked up at the stars, not with fear, but with something new. Resolve. Back in the White House bunker, Lisa Monroe made her decision. She picked up the secure line to Fleet Command. Initiate Protocol Iron Route, she said. And get me Lena Ruiz, I think we're going to need her. No one knew what would happen next. But one thing was certain. Humanity had spent generations proving it could survive. Now, for the first time, it was ready to fight. Not for survival, but for respect. And the Galactic Council had no idea what was coming. The Galactic Council crossed the line. And humanity finally snapped Part 2. Before Earth could send its formal reply to the Council's ultimatum, the enforcement fleet arrived. 3 massive vessels, sleek and black as void, slid into orbit around Mars without warning. Their hulls bore the silver sigil of the Council Peacekeeping Authority. No hails were sent, no explanations offered. They simply appeared and acted. Phobos Station, a civilian research outpost clinging to the surface of Mars's smaller moon, was the first target. Scientists there had been studying deep space neutrino patterns, work approved under old Council scientific accords, but that didn't matter now. The fleet deployed boarding drones that latched onto the station's airlocks like metallic spiders. Within minutes, internal systems went dark. Life support flickered. Alarms blared, then fell silent. Among the 32 humans aboard was Jake Miller. He was 26, with messy brown hair and hands that could fix anything from a fusion coil to a broken coffee maker. When the lights died, he didn't panic. He sealed his lab, rerouted emergency power, and tried to raise Earth. Static answered. Then, the station shook as magnetic clamps locked onto its frame. Council enforcers stormed in. Tall, armored figures with faceless helmets and stun prods humming with blue energy. They moved with cold efficiency, rounding up everyone in the central hub. Jake was dragged out last, his wrists bound with neural cuffs that sent sharp jolts through his nerves if he resisted. He didn't resist, but he didn't kneel either. The Council didn't just detain them, they made a show of it. A tribunal was convened aboard the lead enforcement ship, broadcast live across every neutral and allied system. The charge: unauthorized technological activity in a restricted zone. The evidence: grainy footage of Jake adjusting a sensor array. The verdict: guilty. When ordered to kneel before the tribunal judge, a reptilian official with eyes like cracked glass, Jake stood straight. The neural cuffs flared, burning into his skin. Smoke rose from his sleeves. Sweat poured down his face. Still, he stayed on his feet. I built that sensor, he said, voice hoarse but clear, to watch for solar flares that could kill people on Mars. If that's a crime, then lock me up. But don't call it treason. The judge waved a clawed hand. Silence the prisoner. 2 enforcers forced him to his knees with a shock strong enough to make him vomit. But even then, his eyes stayed locked on the camera. Defiant. Human. The broadcast ended, but the footage didn't die. Someone, maybe a sympathetic technician on a neutral freighter, maybe a hacker in New Delhi, leaked the raw feed. Within hours it spread like wildfire, not through official channels but through mesh networks, pirate satellites, and old-school radio bursts. People saw Jake's face. They saw the burns on his arms. They heard his words. On Earth, crowds gathered again, but this time the silence was gone. Chants rose in Tokyo, Nairobi, Buenos Aires. Let them go. We stand with Jake. No more kneeling. In a quiet neighborhood in Denver, retired Marine Colonel Marcus Boone watched the video on a cracked tablet. His wife had passed 5 years ago. His son was stationed on Luna. He hadn't worn his uniform in a decade. But now, he reached into the back of his closet and pulled out a faded olive-green jacket with a single silver eagle on the shoulder. He dialed a number he hadn't called in years. "Lena," he said when the line connected. "You seeing this?" Captain Lena Ruiz stood on the bridge of the stealth frigate Odyssey, orbiting just beyond Saturn's rings. She'd been running drills, testing new cloaking protocols. Her crew, 23 men and women, all volunteers from Earth's outer colonies, had been preparing for something. They just didn't know what yet. "I saw it," Lena replied, her voice low. "Jake Miller went to school with my cousin. He's just a kid. He's more than that now," Marcus said. "He's a symbol. And symbols start wars or end them." Lena looked out the viewport at the swirling golden amber of Saturn. "What do you want me to do?" "Stay ready," Marcus said. "They think we're still begging for scraps at their table. It's time we remind them we built our own damn table." Back on Earth, President Lisa Monroe faced a new crisis. The Council demanded Earth issue a public apology and accept the tribunal's verdict. If not, the blockade would begin immediately. No more shipments of medical isotopes. No more data exchanges. No more off-world aid. Her advisors were split. Some urged compliance, buy time, save lives. Others, like General Hayes, argued that backing down now would mean permanent subjugation. Dr. Nora Bell spoke last. "If we apologize," she said, "we tell our people that standing up for what's right is wrong. We tell Jake and every scientist, every engineer, every dreamer, that their work means nothing unless the Council says so." Lisa nodded slowly. She walked to the window of the Oval Office. Rain tapped against the glass. In the distance, the Washington Monument stood tall against the gray sky. "Send the reply," she said. "We reject the tribunal. We demand the immediate release of all detainees, and we will not dismantle Project Aegis." The message was transmitted. Within minutes, Council ships began positioning themselves at every major jump point leading into the Sol system. Trade freighters were turned away. Communication relays went dark. The blockade had begun. Panic flickered at first. Grocery stores saw brief rushes on canned goods. Hospitals checked their reserves of rare medicines. But then something unexpected happened. People didn't hoard. They shared. In Oslo, a baker gave away loaves to neighbors who couldn't afford them. In Mumbai, engineers rigged old solar panels to power entire blocks. On Luna, miners rerouted oxygen recyclers to support civilian habitats. It wasn't chaos. It was coordination. Quiet, determined, and fast. Meanwhile, Lena Ruiz made her move. She didn't attack, not yet. Instead, she sent a single drone, a tiny, silent probe, toward the Council depot near Titan. It carried no weapons, just sensors, and a message. The drone slipped past patrols invisible to standard scans. It hovered near the depot's main comms array and broadcast one thing: Jake Miller's face. Frozen in that moment of defiance with 3 words beneath it: "We see you." The message wasn't for the Council. It was for every human listening. A reminder, a promise. On Phobos, Jake sat in a dim cell, wrists raw, body aching. But when a guard passed by and muttered something in a guttural alien tongue, Jake looked up and smiled faintly. He knew they hadn't forgotten him, and they weren't coming to beg. They were coming to fight, not with rage, not with blind fury, but with the kind of calm, focused anger that only comes when a quiet people finally decide enough is enough. The Council had crossed the line. And humanity? Humanity was done playing nice. The Galactic Council crossed the line, and humanity finally snapped. Part 3 Earth's reply had been sent. No apology, no surrender, just a clear, firm refusal. The Council responded by sealing the Sol system tighter than a vault. Every jump gate, every trade lane, every data stream leading in or out was shut down by Council warships. Food synthesizers on Mars began blinking red warnings, low on cobalt-90, a rare isotope only mined in Council-controlled asteroid belts. Hospitals on Earth rationed painkillers. Oxygen recyclers on Luna ran on backup power. But instead of panic, something else spread. A quiet hum of motion. People didn't wait for orders. They acted. In Detroit, old auto factories roared back to life, not building cars, but compact fusion cells cobbled together from scrap. In Nairobi, students and farmers built solar concentrators from broken mirrors and spare metal, feeding power into neighborhood grids. On Europa, ice miners rerouted geothermal vents to keep habitats warm. No one was in charge. Everyone was helping. President Lisa Monroe watched reports flood her desk. She expected despair. Instead, she saw lists of volunteers, blueprints for improvised shield emitters, even recipes for protein paste made from algae and recycled waste. "They're not breaking," she told General Hayes. "They're building." Hayes nodded, eyes on a hologram of the outer system. "The Council thinks a blockade will starve us into submission. They don't understand. We've been hungry before. We know how to make something from nothing." Meanwhile, Captain Lena Ruiz guided the Odyssey through the icy rings of Saturn. Her crew worked in near silence, faces lit by soft console glows. They weren't waiting for Earth's command. They were hunting. Their target was small, a Council supply depot orbiting Titan. It held spare parts, fuel cells, and, most importantly, communication relays. Taking it wouldn't win the war, but it would send a message. Lena studied the depot's patrol pattern. 3 guard ships circled it in a slow, predictable loop. Standard Council tactics. Efficient, rigid, never changing. That was their weakness. Humans didn't fight clean. They fought smart. "Prep the decoys," she said. Her crew launched 6 tiny drones, each shaped like a human freighter. They pulsed fake transponder codes mimicking cargo ships lost during the early blockade. The Council ships took the bait instantly, peeling off to inspect them. While the guards were distracted, the Odyssey slipped through the gap, cloaked, in a thermal shroud that made it look like a drifting ice chunk. Lena held her breath as they neared the depot. One wrong move, one sensor ping, and they'd be vaporized. But the Council never expected an attack this bold. They assumed humans were too disorganized, too emotional to pull off precision strikes. They were wrong. At exactly 0300 ship time, the Odyssey dropped its cloak. EMP charges, built from old microwave emitters and jury-rigged capacitors, fired in a tight burst. The depot's lights died, its shields flickered out. The guard ships, still chasing ghosts, were too far to respond in time. Lena's team boarded through magnetic grapples, moving fast. No shooting, just cutting wires, downloading data cores, and planting timed charges on fuel lines. In 12 minutes, they were back aboard, engines flaring as they vanished into Saturn's shadow. Behind them, the depot exploded in a silent bloom of fire and ice. News of the raid spread faster than the Council could contain it. Not through official channels, those were still blocked, but through old ham radios, laser pulses between colonies, even hand-carried data chips on supply shuttles. People celebrated not because they'd won a battle, but because they'd proven a point. Humans could hit back, and they could do it quietly, cleverly, without wasting a single life. On Mars, a mural appeared overnight on the side of a water reclamation plant. It showed the Odyssey streaking past Saturn's rings with the words, "We don't break, we bend, then we snap back." Kids traced the ship with their fingers on their way to school. Back on Earth, Daniel Carter stood before the Emergency Council again. "The raid changes everything," he said. "The Council sees us as chaotic. But chaos is just order waiting to happen. We're showing them we're not just survivors. We're strategists." Lisa Monroe agreed. She authorized a new directive, Project Echo. Not a weapon, a network. Every human settlement from the Moon to Proxima B colony would link their sensors, drones, and comms into one shared system. If one saw a Council ship, all would know. If one found a weakness, all would learn. It wasn't a military chain of command. It was something older, Deeper. Community. While Earth organized, Marcus Boone traveled to Luna. He visited old friends, former soldiers, engineers who'd retired to crater farms. He didn't ask them to fight. He asked them to teach. Within weeks, hidden workshops sprang up in lava tubes beneath the surface. There, veterans showed teenagers how to turn mining lasers into point defense turrets. Mechanics rewired cargo haulers to carry missile pods disguised as fuel tanks. Even artists helped, painting ships with thermal diffusing patterns that fooled alien scanners. The council watched from afar, confused. Their intelligence reports showed no large fleets forming, no mass conscription, just activity. Small, scattered, impossible to track. They didn't understand that humanity's strength wasn't in numbers or firepower. It was in adaptability, in the kid in Jakarta who coded a virus that scrambled council drone signals, in the grandmother in Reykjavik who taught her neighbors to distill medicine from lichen, in the pilot on Ceres who flew supply runs through asteroid fields the council deemed too dangerous. One evening, Lena Ruiz received a message from Earth. It wasn't encrypted, just a simple text string: keep bending. She smiled. Then she plotted a new course, not toward another depot, but toward a quiet stretch of space near Neptune. Rumor said a council data courier passed through there every 72 hours, unarmed, unescorted, full of fleet movement logs. If they could grab that data, they could predict every council move for weeks. As the Odyssey jumped to silent running, Lena thought of Jake Miller still locked up somewhere. She thought of the mural on Mars. She thought of her father, who'd told her as a girl that humans weren't the strongest species in the galaxy, but they were the hardest to kill. Out in the black, the stars watched, and for the first time in decades, the council felt uneasy. Because the humans weren't screaming, they were working, and that was far more dangerous. The Galactic Council crossed the line, and humanity finally snapped Part 4. The council had expected fear. They got focus instead. After the raid near Titan and a dozen smaller strikes across the outer system, the council realized they were not fighting an army. They were fighting a whole species that had turned every home, every workshop, every school into a node of resistance. Their warships patrolled the jump lanes, but human signals slipped through in bursts of static, in coded songs on public radio, in blinking lights from orbital farms. Frustrated, the council made a mistake. They sent a peace envoy. A single vessel, white and unarmed, drifted toward Earth's orbit with a message of renewed dialogue. It carried Ambassador Krell, a soft-spoken diplomat from the insectoid Veln species, known for their patience and honeyed words. The council believed humanity, now suffering under the blockade, would welcome the olive branch. They did not know that every human colony, from the domes of Venus to the ice tunnels of Enceladus, had already formed the Terran Defense Compact. Not a government, not a military, just a promise. No human would speak for all unless all agreed. When the envoy arrived, Daniel Carter met it not in a suit, but in a field jacket with the Compact's new emblem stitched on the shoulder. A circle of hands, each of a different shade. Holding up a single star, Krell stepped onto the docking platform, antennae twitching. "Ambassador Carter," he said warmly. "The council wishes to ease tensions. They offer revised terms, less strict oversight, shared control of the Kuiper Belt, and the release of your detained citizens." Daniel didn't smile. "You come offering scraps after stealing our dignity." "We don't want revised terms. We want respect." Krell blinked his compound eyes. "Respect must be earned." "No," Daniel said. "It must be given." He led Krell not to a negotiation room but to a live broadcast studio. There, representatives from every human world stood in a loose circle. Farmers from Titan, medics from Ganymede, students from Alpha Centauri B. At the center stood Lena Ruiz, still in her flight suit, her face tired but clear-eyed. "We speak as one," Daniel announced, "not because we were ordered to, but because we chose to." Then Lena stepped forward. She didn't shout. She simply told the truth. She spoke of the raid near Titan, not as a victory but as a necessity. She described how her crew had risked everything not for glory, but to prove humans could protect their own. She showed footage, leaked from a captured council drone of enforcement ships destroying a refugee shuttle from a non-aligned world. All because it carried human-made medicine. The council calls us volatile, Lena said, voice steady. But who burns hospitals? Who jails scientists for watching the stars? Who starves children to make a point? The broadcast didn't just go to Earth. Through hacked relays and smuggled data crystals, it reached neutral systems, fringe colonies, even some council member worlds. For the first time, other species saw the truth behind the council's polished speeches. Back on the envoy ship, Krell grew pale beneath his chitin. This is not how things are done. No, Daniel agreed. It's how they should be. The envoy returned to Proxima empty-handed. But the damage was done. Across the galaxy, whispers turned to questions. The Zenthari, a council member species known for their honor, demanded an internal review. The Umar, who valued truth above all, began sharing human broadcasts with their own people. The council's unity was cracking. Meanwhile, humanity pressed its advantage not with guns, but with information. Project Echo, the shared network of human settlements, began feeding false data into council channels. A fake distress call near Jupiter lured 2 warships into an asteroid field rigged with old mining charges. A forged maintenance schedule caused a council supply hub to power down its shields for repairs, just as a swarm of human drones slipped in and wiped its navigation logs. But the real weapon was truth. Lena's team intercepted a council comm burst meant for internal eyes only. It listed every species the council had quietly suppressed over the last century. Planets stripped of resources, cultures erased, leaders re-educated. They didn't keep it secret. They broadcast it everywhere. On the ocean world of Nalthus, a young fisher named Taylor heard the recording. Her grandfather had vanished during a peaceful integration 50 years ago. She played the file in the town square. By dawn, her whole village had cut ties with council trade ships. One by one, neutral systems began closing their ports to council vessels. Not out of loyalty to humans, but because they saw themselves in humanity's story. On Earth, Lisa Monroe watched the tide turn. They thought we were alone, she told General Hayes. Now they see we're not the only ones tired of being told what to do. Hayes grinned. Funny thing about bullies. They only work when everyone's too scared to stand together. The final blow came from within. A junior analyst in the council's own data division, a being named Jorik from the quiet moon of Vexus, had been tracking human activity. He expected chaos. Instead, he found coordination, creativity, and restraint. No human ship had fired on civilians. No colony had begged for mercy. They fought only to protect, never to conquer. Shaken, Jorik leaked the council's full blockade order, including the secret clause, authorizing population reduction if Earth resisted. Beyond 60 cycles, the galaxy erupted. Even loyal council species demanded answers. Protests flared on homeworlds that had never questioned authority before. The council scrambled to contain the fallout, but the truth was out, and then 3 of the 7 council members did the unthinkable. The Zenthari, the Umar, and the gentle plant-like mycelians announced they would no longer support enforcement actions against humanity. They called for a new kind of alliance, one built on choice, not control. In the Sol system, humans didn't celebrate with fireworks. They kept working. But now, when they looked up at the stars, they didn't see jailers, they saw neighbors. And for the first time in a long time, the future felt open. The Galactic Council crossed the line, and humanity finally snapped Part 5. The Council did not surrender. They did not beg, but they came back to the table, this time not as rulers but as equals. Their white envoy ship returned to Earth's orbit, slower this time, its lights dimmed in a gesture of humility. Aboard it were not just diplomats but representatives from the 3 breakaway species, the Zenthari, the Umar, and the mycelians. They carried a new proposal, drafted in secret over weeks of tense talks. Daniel Carter met them again, but this time on neutral ground, a refurbished orbital station halfway between Earth and Luna, once used for asteroid mining, now renamed Concord Point. The air smelled of fresh oxygen and recycled metal. No guards stood at the doors. No weapons were allowed inside. Just people tired of war, ready to try something new. The proposal was simple. The old Galactic Council would dissolve. In its place would rise the interstellar Concord, A union where every species, no matter how young or small, had one voice. No more oversight without consent. No more blockades over disagreements. Shared knowledge, shared protection, shared future. Daniel read the document twice. Then he looked up. This is a start. But trust isn't built in a day. The lead Zenthari delegate, her carapace scarred from old battles, nodded. Then we build it together. Brick by brick. Back on Earth, President Lisa Monroe called a global assembly, not just of leaders, but of teachers, farmers, pilots, and students. For the first time in history, every human settlement voted on a single question. Do we join the conquered? The answer came back in less than 12 hours. Yes. Not because they trusted the former council, but because they believed in what could be. Construction began immediately. Not of weapons, but of bridges. On Mars, near the old Phobos station, workers laid the foundation for the first conquered embassy. It would be open to all species, built with materials from a dozen worlds. Its cornerstone was carved from a piece of Earth granite, Luna basalt, and Martian iron. Engraved on it were words chosen by a schoolgirl in Kenya. Don't poke the bear, especially when it's had enough. Jake Miller stood there on opening day, his wrists still bearing faint scars from the neural cuffs. He wasn't a prisoner anymore. He was an engineer again, helping design the embassy's deep space sensor array, this time with full conquered approval. He smiled as alien children, some with scales, some with fur, some with leaves for hair, ran past him, laughing in a mix of human and alien sounds. High above, aboard the Odyssey, Lena Ruiz watched the ceremony through a view screen. Her ship was no longer a raider. It was now the first official conquered patrol vessel, tasked not with fighting but with rescue aid and keeping the peace. Marcus Boone sat beside her, sipping real coffee from a chipped mug. They thought we'd crumble, he said. Instead, we taught them what resilience looks like, Lena replied. She thought of the early days, the fear, the hunger, the quiet rage that had burned in every human heart. They hadn't wanted war. They'd just wanted to be seen, to be treated like they mattered. Now they were. Across the galaxy, change spread. Former Council enforcement ships were repurposed as medical transports. Old trade routes reopened, not with tariffs and permits, but with shared schedules and mutual aid. On worlds that had never heard human music, songs from Earth played in public squares. In return, humans learned new ways to grow food, heal wounds, even dream. But the real victory wasn't in treaties or technology. It was in the shift of mind. Alien children now studied human history. Not just the wars, but the art, the poetry, the way humans had reached for the stars even when their own planet was broken. Human kids learned alien languages, not to obey but to connect. One evening, Lisa Monroe walked alone through the gardens of the rebuilt White House. Roses bloomed beside alien vines that glowed softly in the dusk. She stopped at a small plaque near the fountain. It read, "For those who stood when others knelt." She thought of Jake, of Lena, of the baker in Oslo, the student in Jakarta, the miner on Europa. Ordinary people who had done extraordinary things, not because they were heroes, but because they refused to let fear win. Humanity hadn't conquered the galaxy. They hadn't even tried. They'd simply insisted on their right to exist on their own terms. And in doing so, they'd given others the courage to do the same. Out in the black, the stars shone as they always had. Cold, distant, endless. But now, between them, ships flew with new flags. Not of empire, not of control, but of partnership. On the surface of Mars, construction drones hummed as they raised the final beam of the conquered embassy. Workers from 6 species stood together, sharing tools, sharing jokes, sharing hope, and high above them all, silent and steady, the Odyssey kept watch, not as a weapon, but as a promise that no one would ever be made to kneel again, that lines, once crossed, could be redrawn with respect, and that sometimes the quietest species, the one everyone underestimated, was the one that changed everything.